Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for listening to our content, and please like and subscribe. Hey guys, Pure Athlete here, Jeff with Britt and Brad. So excited. We are doing our second live event at North Point Church on May 20th from 6:30 to 8:15. Britt, who's coming?
Man, we are so excited. We've got, for those of you who are missing NFL football or you just enjoyed the draft, we've got just a great night for you because our special guest on May 20th is none other than new Falcons quarterback Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, we're going to get to hear about him growing up in a small town, going to a small school, and kind of being an underdog and telling his youth sports experience all the way through college, and then talk a little about Falcons as well.
Yeah, you're going to want to get your tickets fast because they're selling out fast. And the way to get those tickets is to go to pureathleteinc.com. It's pureathleteinc.com.
And we do not want you to miss it. This is only our second live event we've done, and we're going to have a great one for you. So get on there, get your tickets, and we'll see you out there on May 20th. Welcome back, guys. Jeff with Brad and Britt. And guys, what an awesome time spending 45 minutes with Coach Dungy.
Yeah.
I mean, what a man of faith, of leadership, of character.
Gosh.
Keep him go on and on.
Yeah, we talked about it. If there was such a thing as a pure coach, he is a pure coach. What an honor to have him on the show.
And we've had a lot of really fun and rewarding interviews. That's right at the top of the list for me. That was just an amazing time.
Well, and I love he talks about just doing everything with grace and humility. And how many coaches do you know that go basically to thank everybody right before they get fired?
Yeah.
You know it's coming. And look, he had numerous reasons to be mad because they were projecting to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Talking about the Tampa Bay
Bucks and Tampa Bay press conference and the way he handled it. And I love it because of that. What happened the next day? Jim Irsay called him up with Indianapolis, and he's their coach.
Yeah, we need to have a part 2 with Coach Dungy because
he said he would.
He offered it.
I know, because I felt like he
scratched the surface.
The wisdom that man that pours out of him. I think we just tapped the surface, but it was amazing.
We talk a lot about character in it, and honestly, if we had not talked about character, it still would have been a lesson in character. He just oozes it.
Yeah.
I laughed because I made fun of myself on the episode that I don't read much. And that's how my wife knows that I love that man, is because she's like, you've read all of his books and you don't ever read anybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Even your book. I know. But
well, at first he said he'd read my whole book, and then it was half the book, and now he hadn't read any, which is what I really thought.
But I will tell you this: you do not want to miss this one. And this is one you can listen to 2 or 3 times over to me to pick up little tidbits. But enjoy it as much as we did, I hope.
Yep.
Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I'm Jeff Francoeur along with Britt and Brad. And guys, I am so excited today. You know I don't read a lot. I try. I got 4 kids, but I've read every one of this man's books. I think he's such an influence on coaches, on leaders. And not to mention, he did win a Super Bowl as a coach and as a player. But I don't think he needs an introduction anymore. Coach Dungy, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Jeff, and guys, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be with you, and can't wait to see what we talk about here.
Oh, gosh.
So glad to have you on.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
An honor. Really
so
is.
Before we kind of dig in a little bit with youth sports and your developing leaders, just kind of tell us a little bit what you're up to right now.
Well, I work for NBC Sports. We broadcast football in the fall, but that gives me the winter, spring, and summer to just do other things. And I try to help out. I live in Tampa, try to do things in the community. My wife and I are involved in some community service stuff here. We've got 11 kids. 8 of them are still at home. So that keeps us busy. But I really am
I thought
enjoying
6
life
kids was a
right
lot,
now.
but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been fun though, and really, I retired from coaching in 2009. I wanted to get more active in the community, more active in my church, and I've been able to do that and stay busy and be a better dad.
Man, I love that. And before I let these guys, you just told us a story before we started. You know, I run the All Pro Dads at Buford, and I think it is unbelievable. But will you tell everybody how that started?
Yeah, All Pro Dad is a organization that really reaches out to men to help them be better fathers. And it got started early in my coaching career. I was coaching with the Tampa Bay Bucks. We had a terrible year in 1996, my first year. Everybody was saying, oh, we need to get rid of this coach. He's no good. 1997, we have a great draft. We make the playoffs. Everybody says, well, the Buccaneers are back on the map. This coaching staff is tremendous. But all our guys, we're sitting in our staff meetings saying, wow, we're getting all these accolades. But man, I missed Joey's presentation. I missed Bobby's high school football game. And gosh, we're just not being the kind of dads that our dads were. What can we do? So we went over to Family First, which is headquartered here. A guy said he had some suggestions for us. And we sat there for all morning and took them in, and they really were good suggestions, how we could engage better, how we could be more available when we did have time. And then he said to us, well, football coaches, you aren't the only ones that have this problem. There's a lot of men that feel the same way. And we'd love it if you guys would help us get the word out. So we said, we're going to invite some men to come to practice and bring their kids to a Buccaneers practice, get some fathering tips, and we'll see how it goes. Well, we thought we'd have about 250 guys come out. We had 4,000
Holy
come
cow.
out.
Wow.
And we said, well, this could be something. And the message that day was, it takes a lot of hard work to be an all-pro football player, but it takes the same type of hard work to be a great dad. And we want you to be all-pro dads. And that's where it started.
That's an awesome story, Coach. And we kind of feel like in our own little way, we're trying to influence parents to be better parents and to navigate this youth sports thing effectively with their kids. And you know, you just are an inspiration to us, and the organization is an inspiration to us as we're trying to do a little bit in our own way of that as well.
Well, thank you. And I just applaud you guys and keep it going, because youth sports is so much a part of our culture right now, and it can be super, super productive. We have so many. I remember my last couple of years coaching, and we'd be at the scouting combine. You have the top 300 players in, and you get to interview them. And so many of them in this day and age did not grow up in that nuclear family. And what happens, and you talk to them, hey, where'd you get your inspiration? Well, gosh, it was my Pee-wee football coach. It was my Little League baseball coach. He believed in me, and he got me going. And you hear so many of those stories. But then you see the other side of it as well. We have 8 boys that have gone through or are going through youth sports. And I remember my oldest boy, Eric, he ended up being a wide receiver at University of Oregon. But he grew up around football. He couldn't wait to play. And we had to hold him off, and finally we let him play. And the second day he came back, Dad, I don't want to play anymore. I mean, what are you talking about? For 5 years, all you've done is bug me about playing football. So I went out to practice, and it was worse than any practice I've ever been involved in as a professional coach. And you had this guy who was just trying to make these guys Super Bowl winners and yelling at him and screaming at him. And he took my son's desire to play right away from it. He ended up quitting. The next year he went back, and he had a great coach and turned him around. He ended up being on a back-to-back state high school championship team, got a scholarship to the University of Oregon. But his first experience was just terrible. And these youth coaches and youth parents have so much that they can steer one way or the other. They can really direct these young people on great experiences, or they can be tough experiences. So I just applaud what you guys are doing.
Well, thanks so much. Hey, I've got to ask you, this is maybe a little out of sequence of how we would normally do an interview, but you just brought that story in, and we get questions from parents all the time with similar situations. How do I deal with this coach and my kid who are in that situation? I'm curious, How did you deal with that back then?
Yeah, I talked to the coach, and I tried to do it from a kind of coach to coach standpoint. I said, hey, I know what you're doing, and you're trying to make these young men the best they can be, but understand you're a detriment right now. And I went back to my first professional coach, Chuck Noll, Pittsburgh Steelers, 4 Super Bowls, and I played for him for 2 years. Then I came back on the coaching staff, and I asked him, Coach Noll, I've never coached in my life. What am I supposed to do? And he told me something, Jeff, that it stayed with me the rest of my life. He said, Tony, as a coach, your only job is to help your players be the best they can be. Help your players. And the light went on, and I said, that's why I love this guy so much. That's why he was so successful, because he felt like that was his job. Pick out good players and then help them be better. So that's what I tried to do. The second thing he always said to us was, you win with fundamentals, but as a coach, remember, the first 3 letters of fundamentals is F-U-N. So don't take the fun out of it or you'll ruin the fundamentals. And again, I kept that through my whole career. I'm coaching, professional level players, but I'm trying to help them and I'm trying to make the game fun. And then I would see these youth coaches who they think they're helping, but they're just so demanding and they take the fun out of it. And that is not helping those young kids at all. So as a parent, that's what I would encourage. I would say, hey, coach, don't take the fun out of it for my daughter or my son.
That's great.
Coach, and we'll continue on with the coaching questions for a little while, but you were known as someone who wasn't a screamer or a yeller. How did you gain the respect and also just the excellence out of your players by doing it in to me, it's really such an unusual way, because most coaches seem to be, screamers and aggressive, and they feel like they've got to motivate that way, but you motivated in a quiet way. So can you talk a little bit about, is that something that happened over time, or were you always like that, or did you learn from other coaches to do that, or because it's so effective?
I was really blessed because I played for Chuck Noll, who wasn't a screamer or yeller. Then I got traded to the San Francisco 49ers, and I played for Bill Walsh his first year of coaching. So here's 2 guys that end up winning 7 Super Bowls. And they were very cerebral. They were very encouraging. And so I saw it done that way. And then when Coach Noll said, your job as a coach is to help your players, I thought back, who were the coaches that I really liked? Who did I enjoy playing for? Who helped me the most? Well, it wasn't the yellers or the screamers. It was the guys who taught me how to play the game, the guys who corrected me and encouraged me. So I made up my mind right then as a 25-year-old coach, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to be an encourager. And I did that. And as an assistant, my players took to me really well. Hey, we like this. This is great. You're teaching us what to do. You're building us up. You make us feel good. We want to go out there and play. So my 15 years as an assistant, that was great. Everybody said, oh, he's this, he's that. He helps the players. They love playing for him. Well, then I started interviewing for head coaching jobs, and people, oh, that's terrible. You can't be like that as a head coach. You have to be the bad cop. And I thought, why does it have to change? If my players really like me as an assistant, they won't like me the same way as the head coach? No. You have to be the disciplinarian. You have to put the iron hammer down. And I just never bought into that. And it took me a little while. I had several interviews that I didn't get the jobs because people maybe had that perception of what the coach should be. But when I got to Tampa, I told the players, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I've always been. Now, if you need somebody to yell at you and scream at you for you to play your best, please raise your hand and I'll try to trade you to somebody who's going to yell and scream at you. Nobody raised their hand, so I thought I could do it that way.
That's great.
Well, it obviously was super successful. Hey, I'm sure we got more coaching questions that we're going to get to, but we kind of want to take you back a little bit to your own days in youth sports and growing up where you grew up. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and when you started playing sports and what you played?
I grew up in a little automotive industrial town in Michigan, Jackson, Michigan, small town. Everybody played sports. Everybody hung out together. My dad and his brothers were all kind of into sports. So I just loved playing. And fortunately, my parents were teachers. So they both said, hey, okay, you want to play ball? Good grades. Bad grades, no ball. So I became a good student because I wanted to play ball. But from my earliest remembrances, Little League Baseball, it was the first team sport that I played. And then I went to the Park League and played football, and Richard Holmes was my coach. And he said, you've got a good arm. You played the outfield. I think you could be a quarterback. I'm gonna put you in charge of this team. And I was the quarterback at 11 years old. Our 12-year-old team, we won the Michigan State Little League Championship, first championship I ever won. And gosh, we were so proud of that. Playing together and being from this little small town and beating the big city guys, it was tremendous. But most of my friendships were made around those youth sports teams, and I just loved it. And I wouldn't trade the way that I grew up for anything in the world. It was just so much fun, and I learned so much about being a teammate, caring about other people, sacrificing for the team goals. All of those things that you learn in sports, I learned them in youth football, basketball, and baseball.
You know, I love something you said. You talked about your parents being educators, because both my parents were educators too. And it was the exact same way in my household. I mean, it was like, you don't have good grades, you're not playing. And that's what drove the ship. But, you know, talk about your parents, how influential they were in developing you, and not just as a player, but eventually you talk about, I'm sure there's a lot of things you used when you coached through your parents.
Yeah, no doubt. And I still, most of my players that played for me feel like they know my parents intimately, because I'd always, well, my mom used to say this, my dad said this, here's something I learned. And when they would meet my dad, they said, Mr. Dungy, I know you because your son talks about you all the time. But they were such a big part of my life. My dad, I'll start out by saying this. Whenever I had a bad day or I felt like something went wrong at practice or at a game, I'd go to my mom, because my mom was going to be sympathetic. My dad would sit there and he'd listen and he'd say, okay, they didn't put you in the game, or you're batting eighth and you think you should have been batting third. What are you going to do to make the situation better? What are you going to do tomorrow to make things better? And I'm like, Dad, what about my feelings today? What about right now? How come doesn't matter? What are you going to do to make it better? Go out there, practice better, show the coach that he's got to put you in the game. Hit in batting practice. So he puts you in that third spot. He would not let me make excuses, and he'd always want me to make the situation better. My mom, on the other hand, she would listen. She'd be sympathetic. Hey, let's pray about this. And then she would say, well, it doesn't matter if you do your best and you're doing it for the Lord and you're doing it for the right reasons, it'll work out. And so I had this balance of work hard, make things better, but do it in the right way and do it for the right person, and you're going to be in good shape.
Coach, when you were in high school, did you continue to play multiple sports?
I did. Basketball was my first love, and that's what I loved to play. My best sport was baseball. When I was in high school, I actually got a letter from the Kansas City Royals. They had just started that academy, and they wanted me to come and, not play any more sports, not go to college, but to come to their academy, and they would draft me. Football was actually the last sport that I played. I ended up probably just excelling in that one. I don't know why, but I wanted to play everything. And then my senior year in high school, we had a really good football team, really good basketball team. I was getting recruited by a lot of the Big Ten schools, getting recruited nationally. And University of Minnesota was one of the few schools that was going to let me play football as a quarterback and play basketball. And that was my dream. And so I went to Minnesota, and it was a great time of life. I met a lot of good people. Played 1 year of basketball, and then I found out the guys were really a lot bigger than I was, and I was going to have a better chance to play football. And so I ended up my sophomore year of football concentrating on that. Yeah.
So, Coach, I have to ask you, since you played basketball and football at a high level, Austin Rivers this week came out with this comment about, all these NBA players that could easily play in the NFL, but NFL players couldn't play in the NBA. What are your thoughts about that?
I've never met a football player who didn't think they could play basketball. And I've really, the basketball players I know felt like they could have played football, but it really wasn't for them. Why get hit like that? Both sports are so fine-tuned, and you've got to be excellent. Quinn Buckner was a year ahead of me in coming out. He played at the University of Indiana, was a great football player, ended up giving it up to play basketball. Deion Sanders played baseball and football. That is so rare. Charlie Ward was a great Heisman Trophy winning football player. I thought he could have been Joe Montana had he concentrated on football. He ends up going to the New York Knicks and playing 15 years in the NBA. Those people are rare. They are very rare. Most people think they could play the other sports. I thought I could be a basketball player. It didn't take me long to figure out I couldn't. I think Austin Rivers, if he came out and played maybe a week of training camp, he would say, I don't know if I can be a football player.
Oh, dude, I'm sure there'd be some people headhunting for him out there after those comments, too.
Yes, there would.
You talked a few minutes ago. I love what you said, how there's a coach or two in everybody's lives that is so influential, whether they motivate them, point them in the right direction. Who were one or two of your coaches growing up that really did that for you, and why?
My high school coach, his name was Dave Driscoll, and he got me when I was 14 years old. Sophomore, coming into the school, he said, hey, you're a good athlete. I know your background. I know your parents. You're going to be a leader for us, and you can do some great things. And he gave me a little card, Jeff, and I kept it all my life. And the card said on it, talent is God-given, be thankful. Praise is man-given, be humble. Conceit is self-given, be careful. I think
Wow.
he got it from John Wooden, but what he was trying to tell me is, hey, you're going to have a good career. You're going to do some good things. But understand, it's not just you. It's your teammates. It's that God-given ability. It's your parents. And don't take anything for granted. Just keep working hard, be a good teammate, and you're going to be in good shape. And he stuck by me, and he believed in me, and he got me going. And then I got to college, and my college coach was a guy named Cal Stahl, and he was very influential too. The very first meeting we had, I was a freshman at Minnesota, and he said, success is uncommon. Therefore, it's not to be enjoyed by the common man. We want to win a Big Ten championship. We want to win a national championship. We can't do it with the common man. I can't just go to the library and get 40 guys to come out here that are all right with being average. You've got to want to be the best. Now, there's two ways you can be uncommon. He said you can have a talent or this gift that is so rare nobody else has it, or you can have a desire that allows you to do what everybody else could do, but most people won't. And that stuck with me right there, Jeff. I said, okay, if that's all it takes, if it takes drive and desire, I'm going to be the first one in here in the film room. I'm going to be the first guy working out. I'm going to be the last guy to leave. And that's how I'm going to be uncommon. And that stuck with me. Then I got to professional football, and Chuck Knowles, my coach, they've won 2 Super Bowls already. I come in as a rookie, and there's 10 Hall of Famers around already on the team. They've got these Super Bowl trophies. And I'm thinking Coach Knoll is going to say, hey, you worked hard in high school. You worked hard in college. You're going to need more. Give it everything you've got. Make this. And he was just the opposite. He said, man, you're now in the National Football League. You get paid to play football now, so that makes it your profession. But don't make football your life. If you make football your whole life, you're going to leave the game disappointed. And I'm writing this down, and I couldn't believe it. And that's the first time I'd ever had a coach say that to me. He said, you got to find ways to get satisfaction. Part of it's going to be on this football field, but so much of it isn't. And I have to give a lot of credit to the Steelers organization, Coach Knoll and Art Rooney, our owner. They talked about community service. They talked about doing things away from the game. Our off days, they made the rookies sign up for community service events. They'd have a list of 10 or 12 things. You can go to one of these on your off day, but you're going to have to do it once a month because we want you to get involved in the community. And man, that was one of the best things, getting out, talking to people, having them see that you're just a regular person. You're just like they are, and having fun and learning your way around Pittsburgh. It was awesome. But those three coaches, one high school, one college, and one in the NFL, had so much impact on me. And then when I became a coach later on, I tried to lump all that together and say, I'm going to be the same way, encourage my players, help them find satisfaction off the field, and help them strive to not just be average, not be okay, but be uncommon.
Well, now I see where the title of your book came too.
Yes.
It's making sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that because that translates at every level, really,
Yes.
and the impact that the coaches make. Hey, kind of adjacent to that, we have 5 pillars that we've kind of defined a pure athlete as. And one of those pillars is character. And we talk all the time about there's plenty of examples of successful athletes that don't show a lot of character. And so I'm going to ask you, as somebody who's known for high character, what would you say to kids and to parents about character in sports and why it matters and why we ought to emphasize it?
I think one of the reasons you play sports and one of the lessons you should learn from it is that character is important. Character development is crucial to success. And I will tell you this, in my 13 years as a head coach, and maybe one of the reasons I didn't get that opportunity early on is I was a stickler for that. And so when I interviewed with the Buccaneers, one of the things that I said is talent wins games, character wins championships. And so we're looking for talented players with character. And talented players without character, I really don't want on my team. We can work with them, we can help, but they're going to slow down the development. So we're going to try to measure character just like we measure height, weight, speed, strength, all of those things. We're going to have a grade for it, and we are not going to take C minus, D minus character people, no matter how talented they are. And I'll tell you what, you say that in theory, it sounds good and everybody goes along with it. Well, we got into our scouting meetings and I talked to our scouts and I said, hey, as you're doing your homework on these guys, I want you to talk to not just the coaches. I want you to talk to the professors. I want you to talk to the academic counselor. I want you to talk to the equipment man and find out, is this a guy who hangs his uniform up when he comes off the field, or does he just leave it on the floor? How does he treat the other people around the building? How does he treat people that aren't his coaches? And I want you to give a grade for that. And we did that. And then so when draft time came, we had a category on our board. We called it DNDC, and Jeff probably read about it in the book. It said, do not draft because of character. And so this was guys who we had maybe a first round, second round grade on athletically, but they were not going to be on our draft board because we didn't think they would fit in as Buccaneers. They weren't the type of people that we would want. And I'd say the first time we brought our owners in to look at the board, they were a little shocked to see some of the names up there that we had in the do not draft category. And is this really true? Yes, this is what we talked about. Well, we didn't know it was going to apply to this guy, or what about that guy? And fortunately, our general manager, we're all on the same page. We stuck to our guns, and we had a high character team there in Tampa and also in Indianapolis. And I would say to my players all the time, all these young kids look at you. You're role models for them. I do not want a parent to come to me and say, gosh, Jeff Francoeur is my son's favorite player. And I have to say, oh, no, don't pick Jeff. Pick another guy because, he's a great player, but he's not the one you want your son to model after. I didn't want that. I wanted every guy on my team that mom or dad could say, hey, Jeff Francoeur is my favorite player, my son's favorite player. And I would say, great, that's awesome. Do what he does, get to know him, because he's going to be a great role model for your son or daughter.
I love that. I always read with Gino Ariama, the great coach at Connecticut, and he says when he goes to recruit girls, he doesn't watch the game. He's like, I know why I'm there. They're unbelievable. They can play for me. He said the same thing. I watch how they cheer on their teammates. I watch how they motivate other people on their team, how they treat their coaches. And that's one thing I loved about your book. And I know that there's in today's world, right? We talk about it. That's not a very popular way to go about things. But you know what's so cool is you did that in Tampa, right? And you didn't get to finish kind of what you started. And you go to Indianapolis and you finally get over the mountaintop. What was that like the last minute or two of the Super Bowl when you're watching that go down and you know I'm about to be Super Bowl winning coach and first African-American coach in that fact?
It was really unbelievable because I got to Tampa. We'd had 13 straight losing seasons. We were averaging about 25,000 fans a game. If you can just make us relevant, that's all we want. If we could just compete, that'd be great. So we make the playoffs 4 out of 6 years. We're 2 minutes away from the Super Bowl. We've got sellout season tickets now. Everybody's fired up about the Bucs, and they say, well, you did a great job, but we don't think you're the guy that can get us over the hump. And so that was really, really disappointing. I go to Indianapolis, and we've got Peyton Manning. We've got a lot of really star players. We get close 2 or 3 times, and then we do. We get to the Super Bowl, and we were up 12 points with a minute and a half to go. And I remember sitting there saying, how does this happen? How does a guy from Jackson, Michigan, this little town who, has never produced an NFL player before, how do I get here and what happened? And I started thinking back to all of those guys, Coach Driscoll, Coach Stahl, my parents, just everybody that poured into me. There's a guy named Leroy Rockamore. He was our middle school assistant principal. And I got into a kind of a back and forth with the coaching staff on my high school team. And Mr. Rockamore called me and he said, I haven't talked to you in 3 or 4 years, but what is going on? You need to get yourself ready to play. And, you need to be the type of student that you were when you were here in middle school. And I don't want to hear any more about this. And I said, okay, Mr. Rockamore, you got it. And he, just that phone call to get me back on track, a guy who hadn't seen me in 2 or 3 years, but still cared about me. And I started thinking about all of those people and said, Lord, you're pretty good to bring me here. And it should have been maybe some of those guys.
Coach, when you parted ways with Tampa, I mean, how did your faith help you kind of know that it was part of God's plan? Or was it a struggle? I mean, I know obviously that you felt like you deserved to stay there and finish the job, but they didn't agree with you. But how did your faith come into play in terms of giving you that peace and giving you that inspiration to keep going forward?
It really did. It kept me going, and in the midst of a huge disappointment, I went to Tampa. Tampa was the last place I thought I was going to get a job, because usually someone, the general manager knows you or something like that. Well, I didn't know anybody in Tampa. I didn't think I was going to get that job, and I got it. And I said, this has to be God's will. This has to be the Lord's will for us. So we're having success, and the town is great. We're excited about being here. We're winning, and all of a sudden you get fired. And I remember being so down and so disappointed. Lord, how could this happen? I thought this was the special place you had for us. What are you trying to show me? And I think right then he said, are you with me just when it's good, just when you're winning games? Or are you with me all the time? So I made a decision. Lord, I'm going to be with you all the time, no matter what. So I decided to go to the press conference the next day when they announced that I was going to be fired. And I said, I had to thank the ownership for hiring me in the first place, thank the fans for being so supportive over the years, thank all my players. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm very disappointed, but I think the Lord has a plan. The next day, I got a call from the Colts. Jim Irsay said, hey, we've got a great quarterback here. We've got a team that's right on the cusp. I need you, but more than anything, I want you to bring the attitude and the atmosphere that you demonstrated there. That's what I'm looking for. And that really got me, because he said, yeah, you can win games, but the part that I'm really excited about is what you did to connect with the community and bring the team together and all the character things. That's what I'm looking for. And I said, I think this is going to be a good marriage. So now you go forward, met a lot of different people. Now we've got basically two hometowns, because we still hang out in Indianapolis. Our son, who's a senior in high school, he was born in Indiana, so he wants to go back. He's going to go to Butler and play football next year. That would have never happened had we not had to move. So I was able to see that just because I'm disappointed, that doesn't mean that God's hand isn't still in it.
That's unbelievable. You know, I say that when I read your book, you and one of the most godly men I know in baseball, Dayton Moore, who's the GM of the Kansas City Royals for 20 years, he went to his press conference when he got fired too and talked. And I just always think that is so inspirational, how you handle that. And that's the one thing I love is how you handle it, how you handle adversity. And so we talk a lot on here, character is one, but you know, my wife and I, we have 4 kids, 10, 8, 5, and 3. And we talk all the time about how are they going to deal with failure? How are they going to deal with getting knocked down and getting back up? So now I want you to put on the father, not Coach Dungy, but the father of your kids. How do you deal with the failures with your kids and getting them to continue to move forward?
The same way my dad did, Jeff. And that's what I thought about when I got the news and I heard the press conference was going to be the next day. And I could hear my dad's voice saying, okay, what are you going to do to make it better? Now, you could just go away and be mad and be frustrated. Is that going to make things better? And I thought, no, the best thing I can do is go out there and thank people that I want to thank and then move forward. So I try to get that across to my kids too. Okay, we had a disappointment. This is tough. Where do we go from here? What's the next step? How are you going to make it better? What are you going to do? And get them to think about that. And that's not easy because our natural tendency is to sit there and think, well, this was terrible and this was wrong and this hurt. And let me stay there for a little while. But I try to do what my dad did. Let's get out of that mode and look forward to the future, because God does have a good future for you, no matter how disappointing today is.
Coach, how was your first meeting with Peyton Manning when you went up to Indianapolis? And how soon did you realize? You probably knew he was pretty good when you went up there, but what was it like coaching him?
I knew he was good. I knew he was special, but he actually came to my opening press conference. Then he came in the office afterwards and he said, hey, I don't know what you've heard about me. I don't know how much you know about me, but I want to win and I want to be coached. So you just, whatever we need to do to win, make sure you get that across to me and let me know exactly what you want done. And man, when you hear that from your star player and you know that he's on board and he's going to be the guy that is going to promote the way you do things, it just makes it so much easier. And we still have a great relationship today. The one problem that we had was really a funny one. When in Pittsburgh with the Steelers, Coach Knowles' practice was always to have Saturday be family day. It was a short practice. He made it lighthearted, but you brought your kids. And so that's what I was used to. When I got to Tampa, I did that. Our players loved it. When I got to Indianapolis, I said, this is the way we're going to do things. Saturday mornings, we're going to have this short, light practice. Kids are going to be there, and we want them to see where their dads hang out. Well, for 4 years before I got there, Peyton's his routine was he would write everything down Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every play that wasn't perfect, and he'd want to run them again one last time on Saturday morning. But we would have these conversations, and I'd say, Peyton, well, you know, Family Saturday has won a bunch of Super Bowls. Family Saturday has won a bunch of Super Bowls, and I know it's not your routine, but we can make this work. So grudgingly, he kind of went along with that. And fast forward, after I retire, he moves out to Denver, and I'm working for NBC, and I go out there to cover the Denver Broncos. We're going to have them on Sunday Night Football. One of the players comes up to me and says, you will never guess what Peyton Manning did. He went to Coach Fox. He said, we got to institute Family Saturday, because he had twins now.
Yeah, it changed a little bit. Yeah.
where their dads work. So Denver had family Saturdays, and I was cracking up. I said, "Man, we have come full circle." But he did get to see the benefit of it, and he saw how these guys connected with their kids. And even though it maybe took away a little bit from his concentration and what he wanted to do, he saw the value of it, and they did it in Denver, and that just warmed my heart.
Oh,
That's a really cool story. Speaking of Peyton, and it makes me think of leadership, and and I'm curious from your vantage point, who are 2 or 3 players that really stood out as leaders to you, and then I want you to talk, if you will, just for a minute about can leadership be developed, and even in kids, and how do we go about doing that?
Yes, I do think leadership can be developed, and I think it's up to the leaders to do that. And I remember back to the coaches that I had that I didn't want to be a leader, and I don't want to say forced me, but they put me in positions to lead and help me grow as a leader. And down the road, I can look back at that and say, wow, that was really, really important. But so many times we want to be the most important person. We don't want anybody else to be leaders, and we don't let them develop. So I think that is up to the coach, the leadership in charge, to develop those, and it does happen. If you don't squash that leadership, but you promote it, that's a big deal. Peyton Manning was obviously great. He was a natural leader. He loved the thought of doing it. He loved the thought of helping people. Edgerrin James was a tremendous leader for us in a different way. He might not say 2 words about what was going on, but just demonstrating it, being with guys, taking guys under his wing, just helping them grow, and doing it in his own way. Derek Brooks was a tremendous leader for us in Tampa. Great player, All-American background from Florida State, but he was a guy that would sacrifice everything to win. John Lynch was another one who's now leading the San Francisco 49ers and doing a great job as a general manager, but he had showed those same characteristics as a player. I want to help my teammates be the best they can be. I'm going to do anything that it takes. I'm going to sacrifice, and I'm going to show my guys that I'm going to sacrifice and do whatever it takes. So you get players like that, and it makes it very, very easy.
wow, that's awesome. Finishing up here, my final question for you, Coach, is kind of a 2-parter. Britt mentioned it earlier. The youth sports landscape is crazier and crazier and crazy. You got money going this way. It's a big business. What's your advice to parents as they're walking through this process with their kids? And my second one is because I think you're one of the best to ever do it. What is your advice to coaches like myself who are coaching their kids as you're walking through the journey?
To parents, number one, know that the sport and youth sports can be tremendous, but you've got to stay involved. Don't just say, okay, I'm going to let my son play and whatever happens, happens. You don't want to be a pain in the neck, but you also don't want to just say, well, whatever happens, happens, and that's the way it goes. Make sure you keep observing, get them in the right environment, get them in that place where you can see the coach does care about their development. And if that's not happening, be ready to have a good, solid, effective conversation. Don't go in demanding. Don't go in being one of those, well, my son needs this, my daughter needs that. But, be constructively go in it. But that's really, really important, finding that right place. And don't let it become consuming. I have a concern about the travel teams and people that are going 50,000 places all the time and not letting these kids have a life. They need to develop as players. They need to develop as athletes, but they also need to develop socially. They need to develop academically. They need to develop spiritually. Don't let sports become first place. That would be my advice to parents. My advice to coaches is remember what our job is. And if we're there to help our players be the best they can be, then you're going to be effective. But to do that, you got to get to know every player, get to know what that player needs, and you got to be able to give that to them. And that's not always easy. Some kids need help in skill development. Some kids need help in encouragement. Some kids need help in focus. Well, what does this player need? And I've got to try to give that to them. And then lastly, as Coach Noel would say, don't take the fun out of it. Teach the fundamentals, but please, 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 please do not take the fun out of the game.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that it feels like, winning is the residue of those things being done well by coaches. And a lot of youth coaches, not all by any stretch, but a lot, winning is the goal, and the players become a means to winning instead of focusing on the players. And
yeah, I think that's super important. And then when I talk to high school coaches, especially, but I think this really qualifies for Pee Wee coaches, youth sports, middle school, high school. Understand 1% of our players are going to make their living playing their sport. So if you're only teaching them how to win and you're only teaching them how to be better, in the long run, you're not going to help 99% of them because they aren't going to make their living playing the sport. So we want to teach them how to be better athletes. But if you teach them how to be a good teammate, teach them what it means to sacrifice as a team, teach them about unity and togetherness, teach them about trying hard under all circumstances, teaching them about overcoming adversity. Hey, we lost this game. We got to practice a little harder next week and come back and correct some of these mistakes. If these are the lessons we're giving them, that's going to help them all in life. But if we're only trying to teach them how to be the best player they can be, for 99% of them, it won't matter.
awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll tell you what, man. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for who you are and what you do more than anything. I know you've got a lot of accolades. You're on Sunday night doing this, but you've been an inspiration to me, and I know a lot of other coaches and parents going through this. So thank you for all you do, Coach.
Yeah, it's been an honor to.
Well, thank you very much, guys. This has been awesome. Thank you.
And good
Thank you,
luck with all
Coach.
the graduations and everything you got going this week.
All right. Thanks so much. Glad we could do
Thanks
this.
so much.
Coach.
And if you want to do it again anytime, just let me know.
Will do.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for checking out Pure Athlete, and subscribe to our channel on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you go to listen to our podcast.